So, good morning, everybody. I hope all of you are in good health. I'm Nidia Astrini from National Research and Innovation Agency, BRIN Indonesia, and I will be your host today. Today we're going to talk about the opportunities and challenges in transitioning to carbon neutral circular economy. And we have an excellent guest speaker, Dr. Anthony Hallock from the University of Queensland, Australia. Good afternoon, perhaps in Brisbane.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi. Are you good?
Yes, thanks.
Yes, that's. Today's event is going to be divided into 4 sessions: opening, lecture, discussion, and closing. It will span around 2 hours. And before we start, I would like to remind you that this is a Zoom meeting and not a Zoom webinar. So you will have full control over your cameras and your microphones. Please be mindful of both. Keep your microphone muted at all times, unless you are being invited to speak during the discussion sessions. And I would also like to remind you that it's also an information, if you'd like to convey your questions or your comments, you can do it through the chat box or by raising your hand. And you can do so either in English or in Bahasa Indonesia, and we will help you translate your questions. So let's get on to our first session, the opening by Dr. Agus Eko Nugroho, the chairman of Research Organization for Governance, Economy, and Community Welfare. Is Dr. Agus Eko here with us?
Yeah, Mbak.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. The screen is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Mbak Nindya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much and good morning, everybody. First of all, I'm delighted to have Dr. Anthony Hallock for this lecture series for the first round, I think. Again, thank you very much, Dr. Anthony Hallock, for your available delivering the presentation on the issue of the carbon neutral and circular economy, which is, I think, that is the hot issue at the global as well as at national level here in Indonesia. Your view and perspective, I think, will give enrich our understanding and a discussion about the carbon neutral or circular economy. I think here in our center, the issue have been given a major topic for the ongoing research this year and probably in the future. Once again, thank you very much, Dr. Anthony Hallock, for your sharing idea and you're available for this discussion. Again, thank you very much for the audience. I hope that you will enjoy the presentation. Thank you very much again. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Agus, for opening this today's event. And we're going straight into the lecture, and after that, the discussion. And I would like to invite you, Dr. Umi Karomayomidin, as the moderator of these 2 sessions. Is Dr. Umi here already? Okay, we're going. I think that Dr. Umi Karomayomidin is going to take the screen from now.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Ms. Nidia, for such introduction to this lecture series. Good morning, everyone in Jakarta, and good afternoon For those of you who live in Brisbane and Australia now, welcome to the first lecture series of Research Center for Behavioral and Circular Economics. I am Umi Karama Yaumidin, the head of the center, and I'm facilitating and moderating this lecture series for today. And this lecture series is actually a new agenda in our research center for supporting capacity building of our research capability, our researcher capability, and delivering knowledge how to manage sustainable natural resources and other issues in developing economics. We are glad to have an eminent speaker. Good afternoon, Dr. Anthony Hallock from the University of Queensland. And Dr. Hallock will share his experience and knowledge on circular bioeconomy. And thanks to Dr. Agus Eko Nugroho as our chairman of Research Organization for Governance, Economic, and Public Welfare to kick off this lecture series. And I reply what Ms. Nidya said previously. This is a fully open Zoom meeting, so please mute your speaker. And if you have any question, you can always write your question on the chat box. And maybe you can also raise your hand in the feature. And we will attend to them in the Q&A session for the short question. But we also have give you a chance to directly speaking if you have a longer question. Before we going to Dr. Hallock presentation, please let me to read the short bio of Dr. Hallock. Dr. Hallock will deliver his presentation with title on transitioning to carbon neutral circular economy opportunities and challenges for circular bioeconomy. He will present it for about 30 minutes, and we have a question and answer discussion. It's about 45 minutes. And Dr. Hallock is actually a lecturer and also researcher from the School of Environmental the University of Queensland. And he is leading the research group of industrial ecology and circular bioeconomy that endeavors to provide services and expertise for industry and government clients, particularly in the agri-food energy system. In transforming existing linear system-based value chains toward a circularity in order to reduce emission in the environment for more sustainable consumption and production. He is leading a 4-year DFAT grant from 2022 to 2026, funded by the International of Climate Change Engagement Program. And his project is titled with title Optimization of Refuse-Derived Fuels to Decarbonize Electricity Sector and Achieve National Determined Contributor Target in Indonesia. He has a collaboration with a researcher and also Indonesian student from the School of Business and Economy and also Research and Development Initiatives. He has also had an ongoing project with the Earthcheck from Australia with the title Updating Greenhouse Gas Emission Factor and Methodology to support the accurate calculation of carbon or greenhouse gases footprints in Australia. He was a lead trainer and also a principal investigator for the US-funded project, particularly on the life cycle sustainability assessment of biomass-based technological system. So in this current lecture, he maybe will present two papers that he already published several papers actually, and many papers in the reputable journal. But for today lecture, the two papers that are really related to our lecture is how to advance regional circular bioeconomy system Identifying Barriers, Challenge, Driver, and Opportunity, which is published in the Journal of Sustainable Production and Consumption in the late April of 2022. And the Sustainable Production and Consumer and Key Aspect for Designing Business Model for a Circular Bioeconomy, which is published in Journal of Cleaner Production in September 2020. So maybe if you want to know more about this lecture, you can read two papers of the Dr. Hallock that maybe give you more insight about the biocircular economy. So without further ado, let me invite Dr. Anthony to present his lecture on transitioning to carbon neutral, circular economy, opportunity and challenge for circular bioeconomy. Please, Dr. Anthony, time and screen is yours.
Firstly, thank you, everyone. Selamat siang. Good afternoon from Brisbane, Australia. First, I would like to say thank you to Dr. Omi, Dr. Agus, and Dr. Indra, as well as those people who have contributed in organizing this first lecture series in the National Research and Innovation Agency there in Indonesia. So hopefully this would be an opportunity for both countries, Australia and Indonesia, to collaborate, particularly this big challenge that we have been confronting in the area of net zero, carbon neutrality, and this quest for decarbonization. And hopefully this idea of circular economy and circular bioeconomy will help us to transition smoothly from what we call a linear economy system to what we call circular economy system. So hopefully this would provide you with like more ideas to research there in Indonesia, and hopefully we can collaborate. So let me share to you now my presentation. Okay, so today, what I'm going to share to you is how can we transition our economy, regardless whether we are from developing countries or developed countries, towards what we call carbon neutral. When I say carbon neutral, it means that the amount of greenhouse gases that are emitted to the atmosphere are also equally absorbed by any technologies or any strategies or policies by what we call a carbon emission capture, storage, or any kind of technologies. And circular economy, as we all know, is really trying, we would like to convert the waste, whether it's biomass waste or technical waste, into value-adding products. So particularly in the case of the biomass materials, we are interested to convert them into biomass-based products. So in a nutshell, hopefully this works effectively. In a nutshell, what I would like to share with you today is this slide. And if you get this slide, this is really the most important in my talk today, where at every stage of the supply chain, from the raw material, processing, transportation, and use, regardless whether we are providing product or service, there are waste and emissions at every stage of the supply chain. So whether we are looking in a life cycle perspective or in a green supply chain perspective, there are waste and emission in the form of solid, liquid, and gas. And nowadays, we consider this as new valued resource, or consider to be wealth, because there are already established emerging technologies that would convert this waste and emissions to what we call maybe circular bioproducts or innovative products. And hopefully these products can help us to create new markets, new emerging markets, and in turn create jobs, to our respective economies. But we have to be aware that we are operating within the constraints of our Mother Earth, the planetary boundaries. So we are operating within the ecological carrying capacity of the Mother Earth. We need to respond to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, particularly Goal 12, Goal 17, as well as the COP26, which we all know, we are familiar with this, because this is in line with the nationally determined contribution of the Paris Climate Agreement. But critically, we need to have adequate energy and food so that we can actually feed and provide the energy to our society. But at the same time, we all know that the population continued to rise, right? We are expected to be around 9 billion by 2050. And at the same time, we would like our economy to enhance over time, as well as we would like to improve our personal income. So this is the idea that I would like to advance actually, so that we can transition smoothly from what we call linear economic system to what we call circular economic system. So this is the outline of my talk. So I will talk briefly on what is the current scenario of the energy, the greenhouse gas emission, and the waste profile, our pursuit for circular green bioeconomy. What are the opportunities that Indonesians and other developing countries can tap into so that we can produce hydrogen, biohydrogen in particular, ammonia, fuels, chemicals? What are the opportunities and the challenges that we are all facing? And what are the roles of the different stakeholders as we transition smoothly to what we call net zero? And what are the ways or ideas to move forward? So let's look now on what's the global scenario actually. So as you can see here, the energy consumption per person is really, particularly in the developing countries, which are looking so red or dark red, and it looks like that is between 50,000 kilowatt hour to around 75 or even more kilowatt hour in North America, in Australia, in Saudi Arabia, and Norway. And if you see what is happening, maybe in Indonesia, that it would be in the range between 5,000 kilowatt hour to 10,000 kilowatt hour per person. And as we know that the energy consumption is the main contributor to the global carbon dioxide or the GHG emissions from the combustion of the fossil fuels. We learn in process engineering or maybe in chemistry that for every kilos of coal or any other fossil fuels, we generate a corresponding amount of carbon dioxide. So let's zoom in now on what is happening in the greenhouse gases, why there is this urgency for net zero emission, this carbon neutrality. And as you can see here, the major contributor is the energy, the heat and electricity sector, which contributes around 73%. And they are mostly coming from the industry, from the transportation sector, and the energy used in buildings. But secondly, you can see here that the agriculture and the forestry and the land use is contributing around 18%, which, as you can see here, the agricultural soils contribute around 4%, the crop burning contributes around 3 to 3.5%. So it's really important to take that into account. And we learn in economics, we learn this what we call Pareto principle, that so that we can effectively address any problems, whether industrial problem, economic problems, we need to focus on those key sources of the problem so that we can have a transformative impact or a transformative solution to the problem. And as you can see here, the main sectors that are really contributing to the problem are the energy sector and the agri-food sector. So if we look the case of these two countries that from in the Indonesian side as well as in the Australian side, we can see that the key sectors that contributing the problem are the electricity and heat, the agriculture, and the transport sector. But particularly in the case of Indonesia, the land use change and forestry is contributing a lot, which is opposite to the case of Australia. And as you can see here in this diagram, waste is also contributing around 0.5 tons per capita in Indonesia. So if we really want to address this reduction of greenhouse gases or addressing the global climate change issue, we need to focus on those key sectors in our respective country. And as you can see here, the land use change, particularly the conversion of forest into agricultural land. I don't know there in Indonesia, maybe this could be the conversion of an agricultural land to oil palms, which could contribute to around 1.6 to plus and minus 0.8 gigaton. So I don't know what is the conversion happening between the agricultural one to other land types. So to continue, what is happening globally in terms of waste? So we know already the greenhouse gases emission, the energy consumption. What is happening in terms of waste? And if we zoom in into the case of South Asia or East Asia, where most of the developing countries as well as Indonesia is located, we can see here that by 2050, our waste is projected to be more than 500 million tons per year. So this is really a big challenge. It needs us, really, it requires us to rethink on how can we really manage this waste. And this is the area where circular and bioeconomy plays a major role. And where do these waste coming from? And if we can look into the study of World Bank, around 63% are biomass waste, which would be very interesting for those of us who are doing research in circular bioeconomy, whether we are talking about food waste, biomass, or agricultural waste, which contributes around 44%. The paper and cardboard, which is also a biomass, and even wood is also a biomass. So in total, more than 50% are biomass waste. And currently, where are they going? Most of them are going to landfill and being dumped. Around 66% are being landfilled and being dumped. And only 13.5 globally is being recycled. So there are a lot of opportunities there on how can we reduce our waste in any countries in the world. And at the same time, how can we explore this conversion of biomass waste to value-adding opportunities. In addition, this is another problem that we are facing. We all know that every country in the world is providing subsidies to different sectors, to key sectors in our respective country. As you can see here, 640 billion per year is being provided to the fossil fuels. The agricultural sector is provided 520 billion. The forest sector is provided 155 billion per year. And these sectors are contributing to the issue of greenhouse gases, to the issue of production of food waste. So we also need to address this on how can we reallocate these subsidies that are being funneled into the fossil agriculture and forestry into what we call nature positive activities, or something that would enhance the livelihood, or what we call sustainable livelihood there in Indonesia as well as in any developing countries, because this is becoming problematic globally, and OECD organization is really focusing on this. Fortunately, there is an organization called the Project Drawdown, which they provide what we call solutions. And hopefully these solutions can be scaled up, because this is really the big challenge. And if we're going to look on scenario one, where we would like that there is only we expect there is only a 2 degrees centigrade or Celsius temperature rise by 2100. And for scenario two is a 1.5 Celsius degree rise. They suggested, particularly with the interest on circular bioeconomy, we have to reduce food waste. Regardless whether you are in developing countries or in developed countries, this is a very important strategy, because that is the quantity of carbon dioxide that can be sequestered or can be reduced, whether in scenario one or scenario two. Although there is also plant-rich diet where we could become more vegetarian as we go along, as well as protecting our peatlands, and the regenerating of our cropping system. So these are agri-food related circular economy strategies and policies that hopefully would really reduce our greenhouse gases emissions, as well as any other environmental problems. So that's the situation that we are in globally. And you can trickle down to every country, to regional, to community levels. And we really need to address this. Otherwise, we are just worsening the problem of waste and greenhouse gases globally. So let's learn now why we are this, a lot of countries, not only in Europe, America, Japan, even here in Asian countries, we are really interested to move towards what we call circular economy for sustainable, inclusive growth, because we learn, by definition, linear economy is that we just take the resources, whether it's metals or biomass, we convert this into value-adding products, and then we just discard them. Unlike in the circular economy, we adopt the principles of 3R, reduce, recycle, and reuse, actually, as much as possible across the supply chain, regardless of the product we are producing. And it's very important that we implement a systemic innovation rather than what we call autonomous technological pilot or bench scale technologies. We need to scale up. We need to scale, commercialize, whether we have developed technologies there in Indonesia, any technologies that you have patented there, if it can contribute in the reduction of greenhouse gases and waste, it's important now to scale this up and commercialize this and implement this widely across different states there in Indonesia. So it really requires us to transition for what we call linear materials flow, where we have this assumption of a limited resources and we produce products, and we would like to move to what we call cyclical in nature, where we have only limited recoverable resources and we only produce products, co-products, byproducts, or those ways that we can convert them into value-adding products. So that is really the focus of circular economy. So let's look now closely on what is circular bioeconomy, and particularly in Asian countries, in Indonesia, where most of these countries are agricultural based country. Circular bioeconomy plays a major role. And circular economy, this one aims to provide a sustainable well-being, an inclusive, sustainable livelihood for everyone in our society. And hopefully we can also support the ecosystem services and at the same time manage the biological resources, whether it's plants, animals, and so on. And we need to power this by renewable energy, whether we use geothermal energy, solar, or wind. We need to take advantage of this when we are producing any products, agri-food products, when we are actually supporting the green infrastructures, when we are producing bulk and specialty chemicals, textile, pharmaceuticals, anything that we can actually replace our fossil-based raw materials. If we can replace that with bio-based materials, and hopefully we can actually reduce our consumption of fossil fuels or even the consumption of coal and other petroleum-based raw materials. So that is the intention of circular bioeconomy. So let's look now on the opportunities. There are a lot of opportunities, and I think I am aware that there are ongoing research there in Indonesia based from what I heard from Dr. Meja in IPB. He has made a presentation actually where he has presented the possibility of producing bio-based products, particularly coming from waste. So let's say sugarcane bagasse, plantation forestry, the sawmill residues, the urban waste, the food processing waste. We can now produce biofuels. We can now produce bioenergy. We can now produce bioplastic, biochemicals, which could be the building block to produce any kind of products, right? So there is already this opportunity. It's just a question of how can we scale this up? How can we commercialize? How can we adopt this and implement this widely? And even here in Australia, we are very interested to advance this, what we call biofutures. And we have this ongoing interest of the Queensland government to really develop the bioeconomy sector. And hopefully, I would really challenge also that Indonesia and other countries in Asia would also do the same. And similarly, as you can see here in this diagram and in this supply chain, you can see a lot of opportunities, value-adding products, whether we are producing chemicals and materials during processing, whether we produce nutrients or feed. This is based from a guy research, I think this is a researcher from Switzerland, where he did this study and exploring all the possibilities actually in converting biomass waste into value-adding products. So there is really this big opportunity that we need to tap in. There are also conversion technologies that are already in place. This is based on the review that I've conducted. This identifies the different feedstock, particularly the biomass waste, whether it's agricultural waste, industrial waste, and municipal solid waste, whether you're going to use thermochemical or biochemical. So when I say thermal, that is gasification, pyrolysis, and biochemical technologies, we're going to use fermentation there or co-digestion. So these are conversion technologies already that are already being used somewhere to produce this energy biofuel products, like biochar, biogas, electricity, and biogas. And there are already successful lessons. So this is already being implemented. And it's very important that we adopt this, not only in developed countries, but as well as in developing countries, because I would like to see developing countries, Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, to really advance this bioeconomy sector, because there are a lot of opportunities and we have a lot of biomass in Asian countries. So this is just a diagram showing the waste management flow to support the circular bioeconomy. So our municipal solid waste, whether it's from household, from industrial and agriculture, we can follow this diagram and we can sort this waste, those that can be recycled, the glass, the plastic, the rubber, and those that can be reused. But those biomass materials which are considered non-recyclable, we can subject them into thermochemical or biochemical conversion technologies, and we can produce energy fuel. And I'm very interested in how to produce hydrogen from biomass waste, which is another opportunity that developing countries can tap into. And that is, and again, I'm going to shift gear now to focus on hydrogen, because here in Australia, we would like to really focus on how can we optimally produce hydrogen, because it looks like that this is what we call the best clean fuel for the future. And as shown here, 96% currently of the commercial hydrogen is coming from natural gas, from naphtha, and from coal. And as we know, this kind of conversion technologies produce around 560 million tons of carbon dioxide, which is not really good, because we would like to reduce our greenhouse gases. So there are three possible options that we can explore. One is what we call green hydrogen. This is the priority actually. And this is being produced from electrolysis process, through splitting the water actually. And we use renewable electricity. So here in Australia, we use solar or wind energy. And the target here is that we would like to reduce the production cost to $2 per kilogram. Another one is the biomass or food waste to biohydrogen. And I think this is also a good opportunity for Indonesia as well as for other Asian countries. The third one is blue hydrogen, which we can produce from natural gas and from coal, but there are emissions that we need to eliminate, and hopefully we can use carbon capture and storage for that, so that we can even eliminate the carbon dioxide emission or even reduce it. And there are a lot of opportunities, actually, applications for hydrogen. One is it can support us cooking and for heating, which is very important for us Asian, where we love to eat. So it's very important as a cooking gas. To support our industry, the production of steel that's also important for turbines, particularly if we would like to have what we call to produce wind energy. So on and so forth. There are a lot of opportunities if we can actually produce economically effective hydrogen from different sources. And hydrogen plays 4 important roles for net zero emission or decarbonization. And one is we can reduce the GHG emission we can substitute the oil, the gas, the coal, and the biomass. We can recycle emissions by reacting the hydrogen with carbon dioxide to produce fuel, building materials, and other products. We can remove emissions by separating and storing carbon from fossil or biomass. So hydrogen will play a major role. I know that biofuels, bioenergy will also have a role, but a lot of developed countries are targeting hydrogen. And currently there is an agreement between Australia and Germany, actually, to shift hydrogen, actually, maybe within the next 5 or 10 years, to shift hydrogen from Australia to Germany, because they are interested, particularly of the green hydrogen. But maybe in the future, we can also explore biohydrogen. So let's look on the technology readiness. How ready is the technology? And this is a study from Columbia University. And it shows here that TRL1 refers the least ready, and the TR9 is the most ready technology. And as shown here, the alkaline electrolysis as well as the PEM electrolyzers are the most ready technology, which means this technology need to be commercialized as soon as possible, as well as need to be scaled up. But in the case of biomass waste, we can explore what we call dark biohydrogen fermentation, as well as biogasification. So this is a thermochemical and a biochemical technologies. And I think this is now a possibility. It's just a question really on commercializing, upscaling it, and implementing it widely there in Indonesia or any other ASEAN countries. So if these are the technologies that are ready, that would help us to transition to net zero circular economy, what's their performance in terms of greenhouse gases? And again, as shown in this study, in particular, those biomass gasification without carbon capture or with carbon capture, it's shown there that they have 0 or negative emission, which is very positive, because we would like to transition to what we call carbon neutral circular economy. So this should be the technology that we need to adopt. Or maybe there are technologies there in Indonesia that maybe you have developed there, and maybe you have investigated the life cycle emissions and you have discovered that there is what we call a 0 or negative, and maybe that should be scaled up and commercialized. So these are just showing you what is happening globally, and even that's also the interest here in Australia. And hopefully this kind of technologies will be implemented globally across all countries, because they have been found out to have the least emissions or even 0 or negative emissions. So let's look on biohydrogen. We know biohydrogen is an opportunity in line with what we call circular bioeconomy, and these are coming from biomass or biogas feedstock. And we know that we can now produce bioplastic, bioethanol, biochemicals, bionutrients from all of this. So there are already those past opportunities. So let's explore some of this. Biomass, here in Australia, we have this what we call green hydrogen solution for Australian agriculture, where we produce biohydrogen through the dark fermentation and photo fermentation, and we can use this biomass waste. And I'm sure there in Indonesia and any ASEAN countries, there are a lot of ways. When I went back to the Philippines, I can see a lot of ways, a lot of opportunities. Rather than problem, I see them as opportunities. And we can also use a bioengineered bacteria actually to improve the yield of hydrogen. Or we can, if hydrogen is very hard to transport, and I think that's one another research possibility, because we need to contain hydrogen, but it looks like maybe we can convert them in the form of ammonia, NH3 actually, for easy transportation. If, let's say, if we would like to export this to other countries in the world. Let's say from Indonesia, we would like to export this into Japan, to South Korea, which would add to the revenue base of Indonesia. So this is a possibility. Moreover, food waste is a big problem. It's not only a problem in developed countries like in Australia, but I think similar problem is being faced by developing countries, maybe there in Indonesia, which is said that 1/3 of the food produced is wasted. And even here in Australia, 361 kilograms of food waste per person each year is wasted, which has a 5.2 billion annual value. And we know that food waste contains a lot of carbohydrates, contains carbon and hydrogen, which we can produce biohydrogen, and we can use a plasma dry reforming to produce biogas, or the dark fermentation again. And again, here in Australia, we have this what we call recarbon organic waste to green hydrogen technology. And even in India, they have this what we call a pilot scale technology to convert food waste into biohydrogen. So this is not really anymore a question. The technology is already there. It's up to us really to implement this in a large scale and commercially. So methanol is also a potential product, and it's a very important biochemical feedstock. And we can produce this by reacting the carbon dioxide, maybe the one that is being captured, and react with hydrogen. We can convert that into methanol. The carbon monoxide with hydrogen, we produce methanol. And we know that we can use this methanol to produce aromatics, solvents, and even it will support refineries. And here in Australia, particularly in Queensland, there is a current agreement between Qantas and Boeing to produce this kind of bioethanol or any other biofuel to support aviation industry. And I think starting next year, there will be a biofuel or a biohydrogen plant being built in the northern part of Queensland. And I think this is also an opportunity if we just invest actually in this kind of chemical production plant there in Indonesia. And moreover, we can also produce oxymethylene ethers actually, and we can produce this from combining methanol and formaldehyde. And again, we can produce this by from the renewable hydrogen, let's say from biomass waste, as well as in combination with carbon dioxide. So again, the feedstock here is the biomass, which is, it could be waste from any resource, from any sources, or maybe a virgin biomass feedstock. But we focus first on the waste because that's the intention of circular bioeconomy. And I've seen this table actually from the presentation of an IPB researcher, Dr. Rusli actually. And it seems to me that there are a lot of opportunities or potential for the case of Indonesia in energy production, or if we don't like to produce energy from these different types of sources, maybe we can convert them into other value-adding products, maybe for biochemicals or maybe biofuel. So there are a lot of opportunities. It's just a question of scaling this up and converting them into value-adding products. However, there are challenges that we are facing. It's not only opportunity, but as well as challenges. I think there will be a challenge in terms of biodiversity, particularly, although we would like to maintain what we call a biodiversity rich ecosystems there in Indonesia or any part of the world. We need to apply what we call cascading principles. So we need to start first from, let's say, in the case of wood, we should produce first furniture, and then we reuse it again. And hopefully, eventually through cascading principle, eventually we will burn this to produce energy. And that's what cascading principle mean. And hopefully we can reverse deforestation. But the challenges is there are trade-offs for biomass resources. We know that. We also have to ensure that there is a balance between the use of biomass and protecting the ecosystems and the biodiversity. Although we would like to shift from what we call large-scale agriculture to what we call sustainable food system, because as you can see in my first slide, we would have to have enough food actually, so that we can sustain for a long period of time. But at the same time, we produce all of this maybe energy materials that we need for our electricity and heat consumption. However, I would argue that the stakeholders, so it's not only technology, is the best way to solve our net zero challenges. We people have a large role to play. We can make this choice, and that is good. I'm very interested in your research center, because you have a research center for behavioral and circular economics. And when we say behavioral, it's all about people, how the people behave over time actually. So it's really important that we need to take them into account as we transition to what we call circular economy or bioeconomy. And let's say for the case of communities and people, we need to make them involved to make this shift towards circular economy successful. So we have to improve their recycling habits, teaching them on how to sort, so that we can really separate those non-recyclable biomass waste and convert them into value-adding products. We need to avoid purchasing products with excessive or unnecessary packaging. I think we need to address that. We need to improve our waste management system. Importantly, business and industries play a major role too, right? We know that they have a lot to take actually here, and there are a lot of economic opportunities here. And that's why industries need to invest on new bioprocesses, or scaling up or commercializing bioprocess, producing bioproducts, biotechnologies, so that we can really eliminate or reduce waste. We need to develop and operate an infrastructure so that we can produce biomaterials for use in new products. We can incorporate that. And that is why here in Australia, we are interested on what we call advanced modern manufacturing. And I think that could also be implementable there in Indonesia. And we need to improve the design of bioproducts, particularly in reducing waste, reducing emissions. And I think that is a very important role if we are really serious about reducing our greenhouse gas emission, or in line with what we call net zero carbon neutral circular economy. National government plays a role, and I think BRIN, the National Research and Innovation Agency, play a critical role actually, and they can provide a national leadership on advancing circular economy, circular bioeconomy. We can promote innovation, and it's good that BRIN plays a major role developing standards for bioproducts and biomaterials. We need to protect the biodiversity. We need to regulate and manage waste and resource recovery. But at the local government also, we need to trickle this down at the local level. It's not only national, but as well as at the local level. So we need to operationalize this what we call circular economy or circular bioeconomy. And these are the ways forward. These are ways, these are ideas, so that we can have what we call a wide scale implementation of circular bioeconomy there in Indonesia. Because a circular bioeconomy, if we can co-develop this with the participation of local communities, there would be a big potential, a huge potential to generate an equitable distribution of prosperity. So that would really enhance the economic status of the people. It will promote sustainable livelihood. And hopefully, if you can work in tandem with research centers there so that we can broaden research and education in circular bioeconomy, we need to invest in nature and biodiversity. We need to rethink land, food, and health system holistically. We need to transform our industrial sectors. It's not only that we follow this linear economic system and without bothering the emission. It's about time that we need to change our mindset. This mindset of what we call consumptive society to a mindset which is holistic, which is more, which is really reducing our environmental impacts as a whole. So there are a lot of ways actually so that we can advance, we can develop a circular bioeconomy. So in terms of funding, I have thought about how can we collaborate actually between Australia, Indonesia, and other countries. And these are some of the funding schemes that maybe we can explore actually. And maybe there are also funding schemes there in Indonesia. There is what we call Australia-Indonesian Institute Grant Scheme. I'm not so sure what are the key priorities. I think maybe sustainability or education or the trade, particularly the trade in industry is a focus in DFAT grants. There is also what we call Australia ASEAN, where Indonesia is one of them. So this is another grant. There is also the recent Australia Awards in Indonesia, where it focuses on sustainable energy transition, maybe circular economy, and this is targeting actually PhD or master's students. There are also opportunities for what we call discovery grants. There is an international linkage component to that, where we can reach out to international collaborators, particularly, let's say, if we establish project within Australia and Indonesia, then we can involve you actually in writing and submitting grant proposals, and the same thing with the linkage grant. So these are a few of the grants that are available here in Australia, and I hope you have also some grants there in Indonesia. So currently these are the projects. These are the projects that I am doing here. One is, I think Dr. Omi has already said this in my CV about optimization of refuse-derived fuel to decarbonize electricity sectors. Another recently approved grant is this, what we call Partnering for Innovation and Impact, a collaboration for net zero and circular bioeconomy. And I'm very thankful that BRIN Indonesia will be involved in this project. I have this project also with mental models and system behind food waste, one PhD student. Another project is about policy-oriented strategy to minimize marine plastic. And recently, I have this interest on hydrogen value chain development, because I would like to develop a model actually in such a way that we can minimize its environmental impacts, but as well as hopefully we can green the whole hydrogen value chain, at the same time meeting the hydrogen requirements of any country in the world. And I think that's it for me. These are my relevant publications, which I have worked with some Brazilian researchers. And hopefully this has given you some ideas, some facing the opportunities as well as the challenges that we are all facing as we transition to what we call net zero, carbon neutral, circular economy. And hopefully that has given you ideas, and hopefully this could be the basis for our collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Dr. Anthony Halak. Now we're going to, I will not wrap up, but then I just want to give you an opportunity to all of you, the attender, the participant, to give a question to Dr. Anthony, and maybe you want to make some clarification or some comment for the presentation. But in the chat box, I see that Professor Atin, do you have a comment and question to Dr. Anthony? Please just speak up directly rather than I read your question. It's too long to me, I think. And maybe some of you, yes, some of you who has a raised hand, maybe in the following after Professor Aftin. Professor Aftin, screen is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Umi. Thank you, Dr. Halok, for your nice presentation. And I think at the end, it will be fulfill our hope, actually, when you share the potential or opportunity for collaboration from our research center. My question is actually, Dr. Halok, our priorities at the moment, our president is keenly aware on the food and energy products. And we in Indonesia produce a huge abundant biomass from agriculture. And I think it could be produced into other products such as, for example, the biomass of oil palm plantation that you show the slide. It is very much huge, and it could be used for animal feed, for example. But at the same time, it's also produced the bioethanol for energy. How do you see the competitive products, since both of them are priorities for our government at this time? And then secondly, we do have also technology in how to mitigate the gas, the GHG emission actually. But the problem is, I would agree that making sustainable well-being of the people should be the goal of this bioeconomy circular. So the one that I would ask your question is on the model of the adaptation. It's more important since we have already the technology or the method to mitigate the house gases. So I would say that it's not easily actually when we work on the grassroots to implement the method of the emission gas to minimize, or this is, to me, is very ambitious to say like zero carbon, since the model adaptation itself is not firm until now that is suitable for the Indonesia cases. That's my question actually, Dr. Halok, and I really appreciate your presentation and hoping that we can proceed this with the collaboration in the future, since we do also have a lot of research collaboration with UQ, especially for the beef cattle in Indonesia. Thank you, Dr. Halok. Back to you, Ibu Umi.
Okay.
Let me answer. I think Atian Priyanti, thank you very much for that interesting question. Yeah, I agree with you that it's really challenging to balance this, this producing like biomass or even food waste, because we know that we can produce bionutrients and biochemicals, but with also bioethanol. I think maybe through BRIN or through some of the researchers there in Indonesia, you can develop what we call an optimization model, where you would like to really, in multi-objective optimization model, you can actually create a mathematical model in a way to calculate how much of ethanol that we need to produce and how much of these food waste that we, or biomass waste that we need to convert into nutrients or any other chemicals. So you can develop this model so that it will serve as a guide, actually, considering all the different socioeconomic variables. And I think working with some of the top, what we call Indonesian researchers, particularly in industrial engineering and economics, like Indra and any other people there in BRIN, it's now possible to create what we call a computer-based optimization model, where we would like, as much as possible, maximize the revenue that we can get out from ethanol production or bioethanol or from bionutrients, so we can create a model. It's just a question on implementing this and running a possible scenarios, actually, in line with Indonesian interests. And I think that's now a possibility. It's just a question of operationalizing this, because I think this is being done in Europe in particular, as well as in the United States. But I know that it can be done also in Indonesia, as well as in other Asian countries. It's just, we just have to develop this. We all have computer access. So it's now a possibility. It's just we need to tap, let's say, IPB, the BRIN, or the University of Indonesia, or any other key researchers. Actually, we need to work together. And I think that is now a possibility. And that's one way to maximize the income from this, but at the same time, minimizing environmental emissions, particularly greenhouse gases, because that's the aim of net zero circular economy. But the second question you said about zero carbon and zero waste, this is just an ideal, actually, Atian Priante. I don't believe that we can really achieve this. I think what is more important is how can we move step by step closer, like the same with zero waste. Zero waste cannot be achieved. I don't agree that it will be achieved eventually, maybe by 2000. But if we can move closer gradually, and as we transition, while we have our goal moving towards zero waste, zero carbon, I think that would be good by 2050. If we can achieve it, why not? But if not, it's all right. What's important is the step-by-step or the leapfrogging step that we are doing, actually. Maybe using what we call project drawdown technologies or any other strategies you have there in Indonesia. Because what is important really is that we need to keep moving. We need to keep moving as we transition to what we call zero carbon circular economy. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Halak.
Thank you, Prof. Atian and Dr. Halak for to respond the Professor Atian question. And we still have some people who has raised hand. Please, Dr. Andreas.
Yes, ma'am. Can I ask
Go
a
ahead,
question?
Andreas. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dr. Halok. Thank you
Good
for
afternoon.
coming to our event. I heard you saying like the Indonesian have interest, right? You said earlier Indonesia have interest. I want to have comment on that, where Indonesian interest is not as simple as we said is one interest, but more likely Indonesian in particular have a lot of culture, a lot of people with a lot of preferences in every other aspect. Moreover, I want to set something in agricultural level, particularly on farmers and like some of farmers, they going to if one trend comes like, oh, they want to plant corn or they want to plant rice, it's like preferences to plant plant something or breed livestock, something like that, sir. So it's not like interest, it's more like a trend, something like that. So my question is, do you think if we want to have a model in developing carbon sink, these preferences, these trendings of Indonesian need to be considered, sir? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andreas. Yes, definitely, Andreas. We need to take that into account. I am with you, Andreas. We need to support the farmers. We need to support those that produce food. But we would also like, besides producing our food, we would also like to enhance the livelihood of farmers, considering that they have a lot of challenges and considering the global, the climate change, the global warming impacts. There are a lot of challenges that farmers are facing. So, and considering that you have pointed out that sometimes farmers are practicing what we call rotational cropping system, where they produce that, produce that, produce this. But if we can take advantage of the waste that are being produced, the biomass waste that are being produced from any kind of crops, and maybe with the intelligence of a lot of Indonesian researchers there, if we can develop a large scale computational model, and again, it's now possible because we have this artificial intelligence, we have this cyber infrastructure, all of this is now a possibility. And we need to take that into account, the farmers' interest, the agriculture, the lay people interest. And if we can create what we call a socio-economic technological system model, and as much as possible incorporate the interest of poor people, and that is in line with the UN SDG goal agenda, that is no hunger, no poverty, the UN SDG 1 and 2. It's important that we need to have what we call an inclusive, sustainable strategy to support all, as much as possible, a lot of people there in Indonesia. And this can only be done if we have policies, if we have a policy that is based on a model, whether it's an optimization model or a mathematical model developed by those experts there in Indonesia, in tandem with BRIN and any other experts there. If you can come together, although it's challenging, but in line with Indonesian interests, if we can tap the expertise of a lot of researchers there in Indonesia, particularly who are interested to advance at what we call net zero, this national determined contribution, as much as possible, we would like to reduce the environmental emissions and to create what we call a circular economy and bioeconomic system. If we can create a model and incorporating as much as possible, then we are on the right track. We are on the right track as we transition to what we call circular net zero carbon neutral economy. Because I agree, Andreas, that we need to take them into account. I'm not saying that we just discard the farmers. They are very important, particularly in the area of bioeconomy. But let's start with the waste out of the crops that they are producing. They can produce any kind of crops, but at the same time, as a researcher, or maybe some of the chemistry or chemical engineers should start working on how can we convert this biomass waste from the crops produced from farmers into value-adding biochemicals, bioethanol, biofuels, bionutrients. And if we can scale this up, that could be an additional profit to the farmers, because they will also collect this waste, and then that will help them, actually, that will increase the revenue and their income, which is very important.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for your enlightenment.
Okay, thank you, Andreas. Thank you, Dr. Halak. Andreas is one of our researcher, early career researcher, and we have more than 34% of our early researcher that interested in the circular bioeconomy. So maybe we can take learning from you about this biocircular economy, and also maybe some those researcher can also as your student in the future, maybe if we pursue the collaboration between UQ and BRIN in the future. And actually, just for your information, we have more than 80 people attended in the Zoom meeting, and also more than 35 people attend in the YouTube channel. So maybe there is a lot of question in the next. But then I try to capture some question from the chat box. It's from the Muhammad from the KPKPRI. It's about biocircular in the marine and fisheries. And he has a question that, are there any success story of implement circular economy based in the field of marine and fishery industry? Maybe you can answer his question, Dr. Halak.
Great question again. Actually, as of now, based from what I know, there is not yet a success story, but I can say that it's an ongoing research here in Australia. Recently, I think the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Marine and Aquaculture here in Australia, they are proposing circular economy in the marine industry. They would like to advance this in the marine industry. And I would strongly encourage that we apply this idea of circular economy, the principles, the concepts of circular economy in marine aquaculture, in the fisheries industry. And I've also encouraged this actually in my original home country, the Philippines, to really explore, apply the principles of circular economy in the marine industry, because there are a lot of potential, and we know that there are a lot of waste also from the fishing industry. So again, there is no success story, but as you can see on the other industries, on the revenue that they are getting from converting waste, biomass waste, into value-adding products, we can leverage similar idea to the case of the marine industry, right? So we can study now what are the ways in the marine, the aquaculture, the fishing industry, and if we can identify them in the supply chain, you know, when we produce fish, you know, when we put fish in the market, you know, what are those ways? And then as a scientist, as a researcher there in BRIN, you can think about what other products that we can produce out of, you know, of this marine waste. Maybe we can produce fish oil or any other product. So it's about time that we study. And I think biochemistry, or by looking on the chemical composition of this waste, we can identify potential value-adding products, particularly in the case of marine waste or in the fishing industry.
Thank you, Dr. Halak. The next question in the chat box is about from Augusta Samudra. He has a question. Thank you, Dr. Halak, for presentation. Okay, Augusta Samudra, do you want to ask directly? Okay, let's go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, Augusta.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry I turned off my video because we are there are several persons in the room. Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Halak, for the good presentation. So I'm considering about the scope 3 emissions, because nowadays there is not much LCA researchers considering the scope 3 emissions. So how do you think about this development in the future? Thank you very much.
That's another great question, Augusta. I agree with you. If you read the latest IPCC or the UNFCCC report or the
Yes.
COP26, in line with net zero emissions, there are a lot of discussion about scope 3. And here in Australia, I would confirm to you that we are also incorporating scope 3. And a lot of calculators nowadays here in Australia, particularly here in Australia, because I'm doing also a consultancy in EarthCheck, we are updating everything. And the existing calculator has only focused on scope 1, scope 2 emissions. How about scope 3? And now we are actually adding all of this based on the latest carbon emission factors. We need to take this into account, because a life cycle, if we have to say a life cycle greenhouse gas accounting, it covers scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Because if you guys limit only scope 1, scope 2, it's not really a comprehensive, a complete picture of the life cycle greenhouse gases. So it's important, if you're working in consultancy there or in any kind of sector there in Indonesia, it's important to take this into account. And I think for the next, particularly by the 2030 target we have, we need to incorporate this and also minimize the impacts from the scope 3 emissions. Yeah,
thank you very much. Actually, I am from different research center from Dr. Umi. I come from the Sustainable Production System Research Center in BRIN. So hopefully next time we will discuss more about the scope 3 emissions calculation. Thank you. Sure.
Would be good. Would be good. Yeah.
Thank you
I would be
much.
delighted. Yeah. That would be a very important topic for net zero.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih. Yes, for your information, Dr. Halak, that in BRIN, we have 3 research organizations that concern on the circular bioeconomy, but the concern is very difficult. It's very different between 3 of them, and one of the from the Dr. Augusta is about the life cycle, and then from our center is about the economy, purely in economics, and also for the policy analysis we have a deputy of policy and governments for development, and also they have a priority in the biocircular economy. And maybe any other question that any participant who wants to ask directly to Dr. Halak? If not here, because Dr. Halak still have 10 minutes before we closing the lecture series. If there is no question, maybe just one question from me, Dr. Halak, that I want to interesting because this biocircular economy is newly for our farmer particularly, because we have work in the agriculture, but the circular agriculture then being momental during the COVID-19 in Indonesia. And also the circular economy also has related to the food system, which is our food system still it's not looking good, because that's a lot of the hole that we have to filling with the research and also policies. And what is actually the to ensure farmer to change their business as usual practices to biocircular economy, actually, the first question. And the second question is how to ensure a consumer to consume a product from waste. Actually, they're still thinking that it is not good for health. But then how to convert circular linear economy to circular economy is also there is a evidence-based policy and evidence-based for science that by converting behavioral of people to be more clean and environmental friendly, and to reduce the food loss and food waste is very good for the health and the environment. but then they still not believe consuming the product from waste is good for the health. So this is two problem actually when we promote about the bio-circular economy or circular economy as a whole for our community, particularly for consumer and also for farmers to change their practical businesses. Thank you, Dr. Halak. Can you give me?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Dr. Umi. Although I'm not an expert in human behavior, which plays a major role actually, because human behavior requires us, particularly if we would like to respond to the challenge of sustainable development or to achieving net zero carbon neutrality, we really need to change the mindset of people. Whether they are farmers, whether they are lay people, we really need to change mindset. And I think there are other developed countries, particularly in Scandinavia, where they have made a lot of research and they have made trial experiments actually to change the mindset. And at the same time, it's really important to have what we call a large-scale information campaign. I don't know whether through government or through BRIN actually, if you could really promote this across media, social media, or even in news media on the benefits of shifting to circular economy. Although maybe they have heard somewhere that there are some drawbacks, but if we could really make a very convincing campaign, and maybe we can do some research of what is happening in more advanced countries like in Scandinavia, in Germany, particularly promoting environmental awareness, environmental consciousness. And maybe you can get into that. Maybe you can create some short video clips that would really say, okay, that would really dramatize everything. And they can see that if they won't change their behavior, this would happen to Indonesia. So I think there are a lot of video clips there in YouTube that you can make use. And hopefully, if this can be presented in news media or in social media, hopefully that would help them to change their mindset, because I know it's really challenging to change people's thinking. And even here in Australia, that is also a challenge. No, you are not, Indonesian people is not an exception. Yeah, it's happening globally. So it's really just, maybe, I don't know whether we can incentivize them, whether we put tax if you don't use some of this. I don't know what kind of subsidies or what kind of support that would really change the mindset. So I think we need to play or other strategies and policies, or maybe the government can really implement policy that this time we move towards moving to circular economy. And this time we need to segregate our waste, and we need to promote that using recycled materials into new products is very environmentally good thing to do. And if we can enlighten them and explain to them in lay language, then hopefully that would convince them to move towards what we call a net zero circular economy there in Indonesia.
Thank you, Dr. Halak, for your explanation. It's very insightful for us. And then maybe we still have 5 minutes before we closing this lecture series. Maybe I just give some brief conclusion. Thank you for reminding me about the jacaranda behind you in your background. It's such 10 years ago that I studied at UQ.
All right.
Master degree. It's very nice jacaranda. And yes, thank you very much for the attendee of this lecture series. I'm sorry that the material for Dr. Halak cannot be shared, but you can get the information from YouTube. It's open to public, and you can learning from this YouTube channel. from the Dr. Halok material presentation today. And in short, and I would like to give some brief conclusion that for developing country, promoting the biocircular economy is very they give benefit or have a more advantages for them to get a potential for export, particularly in the biohydrogen from biomass, and also to promote the net zero emission, particularly for Indonesia, in which is that contribute to emission in the global emission is very significant, and also just keep moving forward actually to get closer for the zero carbon and zero waste, and also moving forward for the better environments, so we can change the mindset of the consumer, the producer, and the community also to have environmental friendly for the for their perspective, and also convince them particularly for enabling factors to achieve the goal of the circular bioeconomy. The role of the stakeholder is also important because we cannot promote alone as a country or as an individual to promote the biocircular economy, but we need the collaboration, and also for developing countries still need international collaboration with a developed country, particularly for the scheme for funding and also transfer knowledge, particularly to make the goal of the circular bioeconomy achieve it in the future. Thank you, Dr. Halok. We hope that our collaboration today is not ended today, but can continue for another program, and we hope that our collaboration with regional development initiative that initiated by Dr. Indra can be soon to be signed, so we can still get in touch with your school, and your maybe some of our researcher can be your future student. I mean,
hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully under the BRIN funded or under the AUSIP funded. Okay, thank you so much for the attendee. Hopefully this fruitful lecture series can give you bright idea to make a new proposal and to make a collaboration with other international funded. And for this, I ended the discussion and give to the Miss Nidia as a Master of Ceremony. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, all.
Good morning. Thank you very much for Dr. Halok, Dr. Umi, and for all who have participated in the discussion. So before we leave, we have some sort of a token of appreciation for Dr. Halok. Thank you for being our speaker for our very first in the lecture series. And
thank you.
Yeah, it's very nice to have you here. And then I would like to remind all of you that this is the first of our lecture series, so there will be more. And even though Dr. Halok did not send the presentation to us, but you can rewatch this, and it will be better, I guess, than reading presentations.
That's right.
Yeah, you can rewatch this through.
Hopefully, I can visit you in person next time.
Yeah. That would be nice, yes. In our YouTube channel, BRIN, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And see you next time. We are going to have our closing session with Dr. Didit Okta Pribadi. He is the coordinator of Sirkuler Economy Research Group. Dr. Didit, are you ready? It's muted. You're still muted. Your Zoom. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you for the time, Mbak Nitya. I'm really happy with this lecture series. First of all, I want to express my gratitude to Dr. Anthony Halleck for your excellent presentations. It gives us a lot of insight and highlight key issues which are very valuable for mainstreaming and developing particularly circular bioeconomy in Indonesia. Because as you said that we have many dominant bioeconomy activities. So we have also agricultural-based countries. So it is very important. And we are very happy if we can proceed this lecture into research collaboration, as you said before. So hopefully we can continue this. And secondly, I would like to thank Dr. Agus Eko, the chairman of the Research Organization for Governance, Economy, and Community Welfare, who has supported and facilitated this lecture, as well as Bu Umi, the head of Research Center for Behavioral and Circular Economics, who has facilitated and led the discussion today. So we have fruitful discussions. And thirdly, I would like to thank to all organizing committee who have helped us in having this lecture today, and all participants. We also to thank to all participants that already joined in this lecture series. So as Mbak Nitya said, that this is the first lecture series held by the Research Center for Behavioral and Circular Economics, but it is not the last. So we will have a lot of other lecture series in the future. So please welcome, and we invite you to join us in the further lecture series and other lecture series. And finally, please allow me to close this lecture series. And thank you for everybody. Thank you, everyone. And good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Before we leave, I've been reminded by the committee that we need to take pictures. Is it possible for you to open your cameras and so we can take pictures together? Okay, I see faces, a lot of them are there. This is nice. Okay. Umi, sorry. Okay, I'm waiting for a few more seconds. Mas Kinan, ready ya Mas ya? Okay, then count to three. We have 2 pages, so 2 counts. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and another one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's it. That's it. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you.
See you next time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you all.